Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice large slate here. We only have a couple teams that are playing that are still, trying to get in the playoffs here, and that is the Milwaukee Brewers. I'm just looking at the standings here. As you can see, Milwaukee and Philadelphia are still kind of in this where either one of them could end up losing. Obviously, Milwaukee is on the outside looking in, and on the National League, or sorry, on the American League side, everybody is set. So they're really the only two teams that are vying for too much. And of course, the Mets are vying with Atlanta to get the division there. But overall, the chances are is that Atlanta's got that. They only need, I don't think they need but one more win in order to guarantee that one. So with that said, on this particular slate, we do have Milwaukee playing, and we do have Philadelphia playing, and then we also have the Mets playing. So those three teams, we definitely expect their pitchers to go deep into the game, assuming that they can do well. But obviously, a couple of those pitchers, I think, have a chance to do pretty good, but a couple others, not so much. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the teams. So from the teams that I think are stackable today, the New York Mets, the LA Dodgers, and the Milwaukee Brewers are definitely in the top three. They face the weakest pitching. You could also look at Tampa Bay a little bit, and even San Diego and Seattle. But overall, I think those teams are the best options on this particular slate. So let's go ahead and look at the pitchers that we like here. We're going to start off with Brandon Woodruff. He has been pretty inconsistent lately, unfortunately, but and through much of the season. But he has 4 straight 50-point games. However, his last game against Arizona, he only had 14 fantasy points. This game is not at Arizona, which is a little bit of a boost, but Milwaukee's still a place where you like to get hitters sometimes. But he's been pitching well the last 4 games. Before that, he was very inconsistent, though, and throughout the season. So I think he's a pretty good option here. Obviously, he's pretty expensive on the slate, but overall, I think he's a good option. He's just not the best one. But I will say that if he pitches well, he'll go deep in the game likely, simply because they really need to get this win. Then we're going to look at Lance McCullers. Now, he's coming back from an illness, but he's been extremely good this season. He's only pitched 7 games so far, and in the last 4, he's been over 38 fantasy points. And I suspect a similar outcome in this particular matchup against Philadelphia, who Philly's bats aren't that great, and he's just been solid this season since he started playing again. So overall, I really like him on the slate, but he is somebody you do have to be wary of, maybe a pitch count or something like that. The next guy I'm going to mention here is going to be Tony Gonsolin. Now, he's coming back from injured list, and he's expected to start here against the Rockies. The Rockies are pretty terrible. They're playing this game at the Dodgers field, so that helps some. And he doesn't. He might have a pitch count, so you do have to be a little bit aware of that. But he has, a lower ceiling. But in 2 games against Colorado this season, he's had 15 and 30 points, and he tends to get the win and go deep in the game for the most part. Again, he might be on a little bit of a pitch count on this game, so do keep that in mind. But he is somebody to take into consideration. And then we got Carlos Carrasco for the Mets against the Nationals. Now, he's been extremely inconsistent lately, but in 3 games against Washington, he's been really good. He's had 1 other game against them that he didn't do quite as good, where he only had 11 fantasy points. He's very boom or bust lately, but this game is very important for the Mets, and so I imagine that he's going to get a lot of chance here in order to get this win. Not only that, but the Nationals are pretty terrible, and they desperately need to get wins here. George Kirby is another guy. Another guy I like here is for Seattle. He's very consistent lately. He's actually only had a couple of bad games under 30 in the last 10, I think 2 games. And then in a game against Detroit this year, he had 36 fantasy points. That was actually not that long ago. And I suspect he can do something similar to that again. The only real issue with him is he doesn't get a ton of strikeouts, but he hasn't been giving up many runs either. He's only had a couple of games where he has. So I do like him as a good option here, except for the strikeout situation is not ideal. Then we're going to look at Patrick Sandoval. I don't know, I say Pablo. Anyhow, Patrick Sandoval against Oakland. Now, he's obviously not the best pitcher here, but he's been pretty good against Oakland this season, having 19 and 50 and 38 points in games against Oakland. He's also been reasonably consistent. His floor is higher than most, but his ceiling is a little bit lower than most as well. So I think if you just need a safer pick, he might be your guy just because he's an average pitcher against a bad team. And then Barrios for Toronto against Baltimore. Now, he has not played very well this season, but he's been very inconsistent against most teams. However, against Baltimore, he's got 28, 31, and 40 fantasy points. If you think that he can do that again, he's really good against right-handed hitters, but the lefties tend to get him. So we'll see how many guys Baltimore puts in the lineup. But he does have upside in this game since he's been so good against this particular team. But I will say that he is kind of risky as a result of his, pretty much every other team he pitches against. And but this game, Toronto has a lot of upside in the game, so his chances of getting a win is pretty good. So that's what I have at pitcher. For catcher and first base, we're going to take a look at Freddie Freeman first. He's been pretty solid all season long, and he's doing really good as of late. I really like how he's playing, and he's one of my favorite options on this particular slate. Then we look at Vlad Jr. He has averaged 11 fantasy points a game in the last 10. This is going to be a game where Toronto should really be able to score a lot of runs, and he should be somebody that has a home run potential in this matchup. Pete Alonso, if the Mets are going to try to catch back up to the Braves, then they have to win this game, and he's got to have a good game here. He had a decent series, getting at least a hit in every game against Atlanta, but he wasn't able to get a home run or anything. The Nationals pitching is going to be a lot easier and give him a lot of opportunities. Will Smith for the Dodgers is in a great spot here. He's been pretty good lately. He's a little bit boom or bust, but he's been hitting the ball well, and I think he's in a great spot. And then Anthony Rizzo, now he's very boom or bust, but the Yankees need him to hit good, and he needs to get going for the postseason, so he's in a pretty good spot here against Texas pitching. At second base, we have Max Muncy for the Dodgers, excuse me. Now he's extremely boom or bust lately. He has not been good the last few games. He's had some decent games and nothing like substantial, but overall I think he's in a solid spot here, and if he can get some hits, then he'll definitely pay off on this situation against Colorado, who's just not very good in general. Then we have Gabby Torres for the Yankees. He's been playing really well lately, and I really like him in this spot. When his price is pretty cheap as well, so I really think that he's a good option in this matchup against Texas. Then we have Jose Altuve for Houston against Philly, who's averaging almost 13 fantasy points a game. He had 2 bad games lately, but other than that, he's been solid every game, and I look for him to bounce back and have a great game here in this matchup. Marcus Semien, obviously going up a little bit of a tough pitcher against Severino, but he's been pretty matchup proof lately. He is a little bit boom or bust, but he has been hitting the ball pretty well, and I expect him at his price point to pay off. And then Whit Merrifield, he's probably the kind of secret option today. He's way cheap, and his production lately has actually been pretty solid. Obviously, he's had some massive games, but he's even having some 10-point games and stuff mixed in there. And so if he can have a decent game, then he'll pay off really easily in this particular situation. At third base, we have Manny Machado at San Diego. Now, he may or may not go deep in the game, but he's been hitting the ball pretty well lately. His price has come back up since he's gotten out of his slumps and stuff. And so I look for him to have a good game here against San Francisco. Donaldson for the Yankees against Texas, also playing pretty inconsistent lately, but I think he's in a nice top plus tier matchup here, and his price is just too cheap for his potential production. And then Rafael Devers, he's averaging 12 fantasy points a game. Now he's been a little bit up and down in the last week, but he's really not having any terrible games. I wish his price was a little bit lower based on because he's, his bad games are where he scores 6 or 8 points. Trey Turner for a shortstop with the Dodgers is in a good spot here. He's averaging 8 points a game the last 10, and he does need to get going a little bit, but overall I think he's in a good spot where he can really get a good, home run and stuff. He did good in the last game, not today, but yesterday's game, or sorry, the first game against Colorado, and I look for him to have another opportunity in this one. Then we have Bo Bichette, who has been averaging about 12 fantasy points a game. Sorry, don't know why I want to come up. Anyhow, he's been hitting the ball extremely well lately, and he's kind of due for a home run, so I think he could definitely get it in this matchup here. I find him to be one of my top options for a home run on the slate. Wander Franco, he's been hitting the ball extremely well lately. He's not really had too many bad games, and I expect him to have a really solid game here against Boston, and he's pretty inexpensive as well. Lindor for the Mets, another guy that if the Mets are going to catch up back up to Atlanta, he's going to have to start hitting the ball well. Obviously, this batting situation for him is great against Washington, and it's just a matter of time, for him to get another home run. Looking in the outfield, we have Juan Soto for San Diego, who've been hitting the ball pretty well. His price still hasn't come fully back up. He was in a little bit of a drought a few weeks ago, but he's going well. But his price is still not kind of come back, so I do like him here. Aaron Judge here, if he's going to get a 60-second home run, he's going to have to do it soon. And this is a good matchup for him to do it in against Texas. And he's been hitting the ball pretty well lately. He's just not been quite as consistent as he had been before. He also needs to string together some games with hits if he's going to win the Triple Crown. Randy Arozarena. Sorry about that. He's been hitting the ball extremely well, and he's got a nice plus matchup here against Boston. He's averaging 12 fantasy points a game. He is a little bit boom robust, but I think he's in a great spot here. George Springer has been really solid lately, and he's had a lot of big games, and he really doesn't have too many crappy games. His price has come up a little bit, but I still think he's a top option on the slate. If the Yankees are going to continue to get going, then Stanton is going to have to be a little bit more consistent than he is. He is extremely boom or bust, but his price is cheap enough that you can take a little bit of risk with him. Mike Trout is $4,300 today, obviously expensive, but he's been having a string of just excellent games where he's paying off almost every day, and so I do like him despite his price point. Then we're going to look at Cedric Mullins for Baltimore. He's hitting the ball very solid lately. He's having a lot of great games, and I look for him to continue that for Baltimore as the season winds down. And then we're going to look at Milwaukee. McCutchen, he's been not had a home run in a while, but he is kind of due for one, and he's still getting hits and stuff, so it's just a matter of time. Obviously, he needs to be starting in the top 5 or 6 spots in the lineup for him to really pay off here. Toscar Hernandez for Toronto, another guy I really like here. He's been absolutely killing the ball lately. He's had several big games recently. He's only had a couple bad games too, so I really like him in this matchup against Baltimore. And then finally Hunter Renfroe for Milwaukee as well. We're going to need some of these Milwaukee guys to have big games if Milwaukee's going to stand a chance to get in the playoffs. They're obviously on the outside looking in right now, and so they need some real effort. And this is one of the guys that has a real opportunity to do well here. So with that said, I think we have a solid slate on FanDuel. It's going to be a little bit clunky because of all the teams that are going to be winding some players down and getting some guys ready for the playoffs, stuff like that. But overall, I think it's a solid slate. I think it's definitely a slate that, if you can pick the right players, you can definitely pull off some good big wins. I actually had a really good day yesterday, and so I hope that anybody that's following this advice will be able to put together some good lineups today. So with that said, thank you guys for liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.